Comes in the name of the Lord. Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heart lines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker. Raising a strong daughter is more difficult now than it's ever been. In an age where gender is questioned, toxic feminism runs rampant, victimhood is celebrated, and social media addictions demand constant perfection, it seems impossible to raise a daughter with good morals, much less one who loves her parents, knows her value, and lives with strength. But parents still can raise a daughter who's truly happy, healthy, and safe. Can they? Our next guest says absolutely yes. Through practical tips and advice for parents struggling to navigate a world filled with toxic influences and unhealthy role models, she shows that with dedication and a lot of love, mothers and fathers can raise young women who are truly happy, healthy, and safe. This new book focuses on the challenges, pressures, and dilemmas adolescent girls face in the digital generation, equipping parents with 11 powerful strategies to overcome our toxic culture and to raise a healthy daughter who knows who she is, where she comes from, and how she can achieve her potential with God-given strength. Dr. Meg Meeker has spent more than 30 years as a practicing pediatrician and is the author of the bestseller, Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters. She serves on the advisory board of the Medical Institute and is a fellow of the American Academy of Pediatrics, as well as an associate professor of medicine at the Michigan State University College of Human Medicine. Dr. Meeker has appeared on the Today Show, Fox News, Fox and Friends, and NPR, among others. Dr. Meeker lives in northern Michigan, where she shares a medical practice with her husband, Walter. Here to talk about her new book, Raising a Strong Daughter in a Toxic Culture, 11 Steps to Keep Her Happy, Healthy, and Safe, is Dr. Meg Meeker. Dr. Meg, welcome to Revealing the Truth.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be on.
Well, this is one of the books that I personally am deeply invested in. I have a 30-year-old daughter. I adopted her in Fallbrook, California at birth. Was a single dad for a long time, and she was the first generation of MySpace and cell phones and texting and sexting and where I had to go out and find spyware to put on her computer, and I felt like the Gestapo. It was this realm of technology that I had come out of corporate America, that we used in corporate America to communicate, but it had not made it into the home yet. And so, because my kids grew up in an affluent environment, I was a senior executive with a Fortune 100 company, we had no idea. Thought it was cool. Thought it was great that, 15 years ago, 17 years ago, when it all first came into being, that, that's great. Have at it. But we found that it wasn't so great. In your experience, in your own life, in your own family journey to understand both medicine and faith, where was all that birthed in you? What was your mom and dad influence that raised you to be a strong daughter, going on to become a medical practitioner, marrying a medical practitioner, going into practice with your husband? There had to be a foundation laid, and there also had to be a turning point when you owned it.
Oh, yeah.
What was that like for you?
Well, that's a great question. I grew up in Boston, went to an all-women's college in the 70s. So I was there when the sexual revolution was going and feminism was taking off. And it was interesting. My father was a physician, but never encouraged me to go into medicine. So he wasn't one of these guys that pushed. As a matter of fact, he said, I don't know if I want to encourage you kids, because he saw a lot of changes happening. So really, I ended up going into medicine because that's what I wanted to do. And so I felt fortunate that I didn't have parents pushing me for, athletics, pushing me in school. It was just something that I wanted. And as I got older, and I got into medical school, interesting story because the first round I didn't get in, first round of applications, I didn't get in. I thought my life is over. I'm 21. I didn't have another career. And I was living at home for a little while, and I was walking by my dad's study, and I heard him on the phone. And I heard him talking about me to a friend. And I thought, that's kind of odd. Then I heard him say a sentence that changed my life. He said, yes, my daughter will be going to medical school in the next couple of years. And I thought, wait a minute, he knows I was just rejected, But what he communicated was a tremendous confidence in me. And he knew that if I wanted to do it, I was going to get there. And I will tell you, hearing that from my dad, it's like I realized it was going to happen because this was my dad saying so. So I went on to medical school, and that was, a challenge academically. And I actually met my husband in medical school. And then we started to practice together in 1990. He's an internist and a pediatrician. And I came into writing and speaking sort of through the back door. It's not something I really asked for. In the late 1900s, I was really upset because my girls are about your daughter's same age, a little bit older, and I didn't like all this sexualization of girls. Drove me crazy, and boys. So I started to speak out against it, and then I had a book, and then I started speaking and all. So I think that, my parents and my dad gave me a lot of confidence, but they didn't give me a sense of hating men. They just said, because I had two brothers, they knew that I could do well, and they encouraged me that. And I remember when I was in medical school and discouraged, my dad would say, no, 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 you're going to be okay. Just keep on going. And so that's kind of how I started. And I think that as our girls grew, my husband and I, just by example, tried to show them that women can live well and can be strong, and they can be not hating men. So that's kind of our story.
Meg, there's a great perspective on one, the influence of an encouraging father played a part in shaping your identity. Even when you were disappointed or struggling, you were hearing confirming words, validating words. You felt that there was this belief system in you. What was the faith component in your upbringing? Where was God? Was there church? What was the environment in which you grew up in? Was that foundational truth for you? Was that something that was incorporated, interwoven into the fabric of your upbringing?
I grew up Catholic, and we had a priest friend who did a lot of mission work in South America. And he would come home and we'd visit, and then he'd go back. And I thought, this is really wonderful. And I saw his faith alive, faith at work. He wasn't just telling me this is how Catholics are to live and here's the rules, but he really showed me a dynamic sense of faith. And he showed me a God in action. That really changed his life. It wasn't just, I want to be Catholic because I'm Catholic. So that really planted some seeds in me. And then as I got older and I began dealing with people who were ill and dying, I had a lot of questions about where God came into that. And really through medicine, my faith just grew and grew and grew. And so grew to the point that I started studying what kind of impact is faith, having a faith, Judeo-Christian faith, on kids growing up. And I was stunned to see it has enormous impact. So one of my chapters in the book is giving her a faith, because a faith anchors kids. And kids are born they have a spiritual sense. They want to know, why am I here? And what's my purpose in life? And am I here by accident, or did God make me? So I think I grew up with a deep sense that I wasn't here by accident, that God was real. And that's really what sustained me through life and raising our kids.
So you meet Walter. Okay. Is Walter grounded in faith? Was this something that was compatible for both of you. You certainly both had the medical acumen and the career path into medicine, but were you in that equally yoked kind of environment that said that we're going to live a life where faith is an important foundational component of our children's identity, giving them firm ground that even if we are not present, if we should be gone for some reason, that they have something greater, bigger than us to hold on to, whether or not it's a life preserver, a bungee cord, or whatever you might call it. Was it important to you and to Walter to instill that in your children?
Absolutely. And as a matter of fact, and our faith is equally strong, I would say. And so when our kids were young, we began talking about scriptures and teaching about the love of God. And we tried very hard to make God a real presence in our lives and in our home. And as a matter of fact, my husband, every year our kids were growing up, went to do mission work in South America, medical missions and Christian medical missions. And he always took one or two of our kids with him. And that had a profound influence on the growth of their faith and on them as women and our son. So yeah, it still is a very dynamic part of our lives. As a matter of fact, we set up medical practice in 1990 together, and now we've grown into 8 physicians. And we live in a relatively small town, and so our patients know about our faith and often seek us out because they know we're going to have different worldviews. For instance, if pregnant girls come in to see me, I'm not going to tell them to have an abortion, but they know that. And they know our faith, and a lot of people like that. And so and we've been pretty bold about it. It's kind of funny because people say, oh, in this day and age in the workplace, you can't be bold. Well, we figure we own the practice. We're going to do what we want to do. And so we tell our patients, we pray for them. So yeah, it's very much a part of our practice, our private lives, and our lives as parents.
In your first book, you made a very strong case for strong fathers, strong daughters. I actually believe in that. I experienced that with my own daughter. I was a very strong father, instilled in her. Even to this day, we talk about. There are songs that I sang to her, she sings to her daughter. There were interactions that I had that, because I was a single dad, a Mr. Mom, but I had a corporate position, so I wasn't a stay-at-home. I was a working dad, but I knew how to do a French braid. I knew how to do makeup. I knew how to do a bun. I knew how to take her to the ballet shop, and I was the ballet dad, surrounded by the 30 other mothers, and then there was me. And we actually joke about it and talk about it, and she sends me memes and pictures. One of them was of a girl, and it said, "Dad, please put my hair in a bun," and it shows the little girl's hair in a hot dog bun with a tie wrap around it.
Yeah.
And so she sends me stuff like that and say, "Thank goodness you learned how to do it, because I would expect this would have been your solution
exactly.
Otherwise."
Yeah.
So there's real importance there. But I remember some of the struggles that I had. I wasn't the dad that said you have to clean up your room. I was the dad that said, if there is not a straight path for me to get from your door to your bed and back again, then we have a problem. Okay? But if the piles are 6 feet high on both sides, that's your problem.
Right.
As long as I have access to what I need access to, okay, I'm not going to manage that part of it. And you have a laundry chute there. You know that if you put it down the laundry chute, it's going to get washed. But if you get to the point where you're going to want all of it washed, then you're going to have to wash all of it. So you decide on the size wall you can tolerate, and I'm fine with it. And if there's something in the path, then you don't respect it, I'm not going to respect it, so I will move it with my feet. And if that bothers you that I just kicked your favorite sweater, don't leave it in my path. And that was the boundary. So I wasn't going to be the fuss at her and constantly have these contentious moments. It was like, that's it. Access, egress, that's it. I don't care how wide the path is. It can be, as long as I can get to you and get out, I'm good. And we still laugh about that. As you began to write about raising a strong daughter, you go past the strong father model, and you begin to address almost as a diagnostician some of the, as you talk about 11 steps, but there's also the influences, those things which are toxic to our children, and what the antidotes are. So, I see kind of a little bit of a scientific method approach to this, that I have a hypothesis that you can raise strong daughters in a toxic culture, okay? And that's the premise. And now I'm going to look at the various influences and find out what the antidote is. I can't change the culture, but I can change my daughter's experience within that culture. How to process it, how to navigate it, how to make decisions. At the core of this, and what I found most thematic, was that it's still the same message of love and validation and connection. That although these children are born with this predisposition to push boundaries, because that's how they grow, and to divide mom and dad because they're disruptors. They're created to do that. If they can divide, they conquer. And so they have this natural inclination to do these things. And we have to be the ones who are not reactionary, but know how to cultivate and harvest the good parts out of that independence and that strong will and all of those things. As you approach this book, maybe even differently than as you approach Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters, what was it you were seeing that you felt needed to be addressed that was not being addressed, and what the impact of it in today's statistical environment, what the impact is to self-esteem and suicide and anxiety disorders and body shaming and all these things, these cyberbullying and gender confusion, and all of these things are symptoms of an underlying thing. What was it things you observed in your practice, things that you observed societally? Where was the real motivation? What was the observation that drove you to say, I've got to respond to this?
Well, I appreciate the question. Really, it was all of those things together. What I've noticed over the past 7 years in particular, 8 years in particular, is the sense that parents are very anxious and nervous. Now, I don't think I saw that 10, 15, 20 years ago, because I got a lot of mail on my website from parents who ask me these questions, and I can sense in them almost a fear. And I didn't want to name the book, Raise a Strong Daughter, as a toxic culture. But that's what I was feeling. Parents were really scared about. Parents were scared about video games, social media, depression, anxiety, their third grader dieting. And so I really wanted to respond to them because I really believe, and research bears this out, that a lot of the answer comes from parents because parents have the power. Yes, the culture has power, but it's nothing like the power parents have. So at first I wanted to diffuse the fear and the anger. And I said, hold on a minute. You've got this. You can do this because you're right. Cell phones and the internet are not going anywhere. And so let's sort of look at those and see what you can do. Mm-hmm. And one of the issues I think that's really driving a lot of this, anxiety and depression and all that kind of thing, is we're living in a culture, I think, that parents get sucked up into, and they don't mean to, subconsciously, really good parents. And that is this, that we're raising our kids to perform. We're raising our kids to be, good students, good soccer players, good ballet, and we want them to be better than their friends. So we focus on their performance. And this is great parents doing this because they want their kids to succeed. But what happens in years of doing this is kids in high school particularly end up with this sense, wait a minute, I'm good at that, but why am I here? Why am I alive? So they have those deep sort of existential questions underneath that they feel aren't being answered. I think in addition to that, kids are really lonely. They're just not spending enough time with their mom and dad. I mean, that's the way it is. They're just running around doing a ton of really fun, great stuff, but they're sacrificing time with their parents. And it's interesting that if you look at what kids want, kids actually want more time with their parents, and parents think they have enough time with their kids. So that's kind of interesting. So that's why at the beginning of my book, I pose those 4 questions that I want parents to answer as they raise their kids. And that's the deep stuff. That's the good stuff. And I think that parents, if they really focus on answering those questions, a lot of the bad stuff out there, if you will, is going to affect them a lot less. Yeah, kids are still going to have a lot of stuff coming out, social media and video games. But I think that if you really give your kids strong roots and you solidify those core messages in them, that's what really sets them on a healthy path and helps them be resilient to a lot of the bad stuff out there.
Dr. Gary Chapman is a friend of this program. He's been with us a number of times, and the core issue that we've been able to identify in interaction between parents and children is quality time. And that's a universal language, love language, within a core family unit. Mm-hmm. I grew up in the early 50s where we sat down at the family table. We had, because I was raised in a Jewish home, we had family Shabbat dinner at my grandparents where all the grandkids and all the aunts and uncles and all the cousins and parents, all of us together every Friday night. And whether or not they walked with my grandfather and I to synagogue or not, I was the one that always went with them. And so even on the weekends that the family didn't get together, I still went to be with my grandfather and have that tradition until I left home to go to boarding school in Massachusetts at 14 and a half. And I didn't have the quality time with my mother and father, but I had it with my grandfather, who I consider to be the greatest influence in my life. But that quality time, the hunger for connection, because they're not connected at school.
Right. No, they're not. And they're not connected in social media. They don't connect on the internet. They think they do, but they really don't because they're not real relationships. And I think Gary's absolutely right. I mean, he's a very smart guy. That quality time is extremely important. But one of the reasons parents and kids don't find they're having quality time is everybody's living with this sort of frenetic pace. They're very busy. They're rushing through everything. Most parents in my practice, and I have a lot of great parents, don't eat dinner with their kids regularly. Everybody kind of eats on the run or
Right.
when they can or in the car. And I say, can you at least find one day a week, Friday, Saturday, Sunday night, where you all sit down and just talk about your week? And I got a lot of pushback for that. But that's the kind of quality time. And parents always say, well, when we do that, we all fight. Well, that's still good. I mean, you still have that time together to figure out how to live life and how to work it through. And so my belief is that the more time you spend with your kids, the better the quality will be. Because, you know, parents, when they're busy, if you sit down for half an hour at a dinner table and you're rushing through things and then getting on to the next thing, and then you don't regroup till a week later, you know, it's diminishing the quality as well. So I encourage parents to sort of say, why don't you every Saturday morning take one of your kids out to breakfast once a month? Or, you know, and if you have grandparents, aunts or uncles, please expose them to them. That multi-generational impact is huge. And I really think that every parent needs to sort of sit down with an itinerary of their days and say, okay, how many things after school is my child doing? And pare them down to one. I mean, we had a rule in our family that each of our kids, we have 4 kids, got one activity after school. That was it. Because I didn't want to run around everywhere. And also, I said, whenever I give my kids to a coach, I'm taking time away from their time with me. And I believe that my influence, my husband's influence, is what really shapes their identity, which is true. So I didn't want to farm them out, if you will, to all these different coaches and things. I wanted more time with them. And, you know, it really helps. It really works. And so I think I really strongly encourage parents to just back off on their kids' schedules and give their kids themselves and quit worrying about all the stuff their kids do, because 95% of all the stuff kids do in high school, they don't do in college. You know, everybody wants their kid to be a great, great swimmer. They're a great swimmer, you know, but then they go into college and they don't swim anymore. So you think, why did we surrender all of that time for my child to do all that? And on weekends, we split the family up. We're traveling around the state or the country. And then they go off to school and they give it up. So I think, please keep it in perspective. Because your kids need parents more than they need more stuff to do.
It seems there's a trend, Meg, that when we come back from break, I want to talk to you about, and that's the outsourcing of parenting, and that because of the availability of so many things, that I can still be an independent parent, but have a family, and I don't have to be disrupted. I can park them over here or park them over there, and is the idea of has the idea of parenting changed? I see this new generation of millennials who are getting married younger and having children younger, incredibly engaged with their children. It's very, very heartening to me that they're as deeply engaged as they are. And but there's a window there. And as you're talking about raising a strong daughter in a toxic culture, we're now talking about that adolescent, that tween to teen period. So we're talking about parents from 15 or 10 to 17 years ago, a different model of parenting than what we're seeing today and what we saw in our generation, and maybe even slightly older. Because that's changed. The dynamic has changed, and the drop-off parenting of and there was a long 30-year window there where if you went to church, you dropped your kids off at kids' church, and then you went around and had your own experience because you didn't want to be bothered with it. It's somebody else's problem, and that's how it was handled. We're talking with Dr. Meg Meeker, author of Raising a Strong Daughter in a Toxic Culture, 11 Steps to Keep Her Happy, Healthy, and Safe. Every mother and father wants their daughter to be protected. Every one of us wants to help them navigate how wonderfully gifted and beautiful that they are without enabling, without false praise, but establishing a very clear identity for themselves and in themselves that is not based on a reflection of society's standards, but of the values that the family would develop, having a strong foundation of faith, a strong moral compass, a strong work ethic, and a way to know your child. And so many don't know their children or what their activities are because of this fear. They want to be their friend. They want to be, I don't want to be my daughter's friend. I want to be her father,
Right.
and maintain that role. But statistics are telling us that there's a problem.
Yeah.
Suicide rates are up, body shaming, diets, gender confusion, self-esteem, medication for one extreme of anxiety and depression to the other extreme of giving them amphetamines and stimulants to, it seems to be an epidemic proportion. I was that kid that couldn't pay attention because they had nothing relevant to say.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
bored to tears until my family finally said, "You're not cut out for the public school system. We're going to send you a place that will challenge you." And I was challenged, and I was in an intellectually stimulating environment, and I couldn't stand public school because they asked silly questions, and the narrative had no rhyme or reason to it other than the fact that that's what they had to teach. And
Right.
I was acutely aware of it and bored me. And so I paid no attention, and I acted out and I talked until I got into an environment that you have to know your children. And
Yes.
that's the secret to all of this. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the four big questions that every daughter faces, that really is the platform, the springboard for the rest of the story, and understanding what we can do, because we can impact our daughters in a positive way to give them the strength to endure the pressures of this life and what's waiting for them as they go out into the world to make a name and life for themselves. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. The Lord meets you right where you are, and so does Igniting a Nation's new live streaming outlets. You can now watch Revealing the Truth, Revealing the Bible, and Prophecy Revealed simulcast live each Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 1 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, Vimeo, Periscope, and through our website, www.ignitinganation.com. No matter what device you are using, our program will automatically scale so you won't have to miss a single program. And if you happen to miss an episode, you can always subscribe to the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel and access over 1,000 interviews and never miss your favorite authors, special guests, and topics that interest you the most.
There are lots of ways to see Israel, but nothing compares to seeing the land of the book and the people of the book through the eyes of two Jewish believers who can take you on a journey that will bring the entire Bible to life. When you join Rabbi Eric Walker and his #1 rated tour guide, Edo Canaan, in Israel, you'll experience incredible teachings, first-class accommodations, and actually walk where Jesus walked. You will experience the Bible transforming from black and white into living color, and you will never see the Bible in the same way again. For more information, visit us at www.ignitinganation.com/events.
The Lord contends with what contends with you, and Igniting a Nation is committed to bringing to light each and every issue that faces a believer's life. Our live stream programming and teachings take you on a journey to finding biblical truth from a wide variety of experts who share their insights into a deeper walk with the Lord. We have assembled the most comprehensive panel of experts in the fields of prophecy, caregiving, healing from trauma, shame, and abuse, and so much more. We continue to expand our teachings and programming to meet your needs. We're committed to healing the nations with biblical truth. Visit www.ignitinganation.com to develop a deeper walk with the Lord and start your journey to a transformed life. The Bible commands us to study to show ourselves approved, but most study using Bible study tools and not actually studying the Bible chapter and verse. Igniting a Nation is pleased to present Revealing the Bible, recorded and taught each week before a live audience. We take you deeper into the actual Bible and verse in both Hebrew and English and connect the dots between the Old and New Testament. You can attend our 2 classes in Tuscaloosa and Birmingham, or watch the program every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time on ignitinganation.com and all our other simulcast outlets. For more information, visit www.ignitinganation.com/events. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking with Dr. Meg Meeker, author of Raising a Strong Daughter in a Toxic Culture, 11 Steps to Keep Her Happy, Healthy, and Safe. Dr. Meg, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Before we went to break, we left off with what are the 4 big questions every daughter faces, and that's really kind of the launch pad for the rest of the narrative in the book.
Yeah, actually they're questions that I believe God supplies the answers for us. And the first question is, where'd I come from? You know, a lot of kids don't know that they come from God, and that their parents, that parents have them, but God created them for a specific purpose, and that they're come through the design of God. They have His hand on them. So that's where they come from, and that's a big question for kids. Parents may say, well, you know, that's kind of a silly question, but it really isn't, because kids want to know they're not here by accident. And the second question is, where am I valuable? Do I have a significance? Why am I living? You know, there are a lot of kids that know they're good at things, but they don't know why they're alive. And I think that particularly when you come to anxiety and depression, kids who have a faith understand my purpose as a child of God is to love and serve Him and to do bigger things. It isn't necessarily to just, do well in sports and school and that kind of a thing. So that's really important for parents to teach them, and also to teach them their value as far as they're concerned is that they're loved by them. That even if they sat in a closet the rest of their lives, the parents' love for the child would not change. And then the third question is there a moral foundation? Is there right and wrong? Or do I just have to figure it out as I go? That makes kids crazy. It really does. And, you know, when we threw out God and we threw out a moral rule standard script that was given to us by God, everybody just kind of does what they think they want to do as they grow up. And there are a lot of parents that actually will give that to their kids, 5, 6, 7 years old. Well, what do you want to do? What do you think is right? You know, what's your truth? Well, kids know deep down that there's some things that are right and some things that are wrong. You can see it even as young as 9 months. You know, a little 9-month-old pulls a dog's tail. You look at the child's face and go, ooh, I just did something bad. So they have this instinct, which I believe is God-given. And then when that instinct meets a world that says, well, whatever you want to do, it's not necessarily bad to pull the dog's, tail. He's nice and he doesn't bother him. So whatever you want to do. But kids can't figure that out. And it goes against what their instincts are telling them. So that makes them kind of crazy. And then the fourth question is, where am I going? Where is my life taking me? Is there a plan for my life? Where am I supposed to be in 5 years, 10 years? And then where do I go after I die? So parents say, well, my kids know that. You can't assume that, because our culture says we're to live on a much more superficial level. And parents jump on that, kids jump on that, and we really fail to teach our kids why they're alive and where their value comes from. And that's how you really root kids.
You know, in the early stages of child development, baby, before people 6, 9 months put them into daycare, and then they outsource the instructional aspects of their upbringing, and it's very conflicting, very confusing as to who the authority is, because there's a transference of authority. Mom and dad hand off to a third party. That third party is now do what they say and be a good girl and don't cause any trouble and try to get along, and don't forget to work on that sharing thing. Don't forget to work on that hitting thing, or whatever it is that you leave them with that instruction as you drop them off, and you vacate the authority role, and you really have no idea what is being imparted to them. And then you pick them up, you bring them back in and re-entry into your world that you have control over. And they may hear a very conflicting message, not know how to articulate that, but then there's this battle inside of, well, that's not what they told me earlier. And
what's right and what's wrong? Who do I listen to?
And school's the same way. Is your creation and their evolution, and you are no gender confusion medically. You know the Y and the X, but yet the school is teaching them different. And how do we wrestle? Find and navigate through this so that we are the voice that's consistent. We are the and I think that's really the point of it, is that if we are not consistent, if we as parents ride the tide where we're concerned about our social media, if we're concerned about our identity and how we look to our friends, and we're consumed by looking at our phones at the dinner table, then we're creating the toxic environment that we're trying to insulate or equip our children to navigate. And we're really the ones that are the leaven that are bringing it into the home, but yet we want to point the finger at somebody else. Yeah. And that requires a lot of self-examination. And do I put my children above, not above God and not above my spouse, but do I put them in God's order? God first, then my spouse, then my children. Am I parenting in unity with my spouse, my husband, or my wife? Are we putting our kids before our jobs and our social status and our desire to take exotic vacations and do these things? Are we putting family first? And isn't that really a part of the core of raising strong children, whether it be daughters or sons or family connection? I know that when I left home, I left. That was 55 years ago, 56 years ago, never to have returned back under the roof of my parents. Never. Disconnect. Because it wasn't my connection wasn't found there.
Yep. You know, you're absolutely right. And one of the things we hear over and over and over of, you know, divorced people in the media, particularly actresses and actors, and I hear it from a lot of divorced people. Well, my kids are going to be my priority always. I'm going to put them first. But then you look at how they live their lives, and they really don't. Because if something is really a priority, you're going to give that a lot of time. But what they're doing is, like you said, farming their kids out. And you're absolutely right. When kids are young, under 3, they need to have consistency in teaching, but they also need emotional attachment. And if they never attach to a parent, they see the world very differently, and they don't learn to trust. They end up questioning themselves, and they don't have that deep sense of security. And I think that this is really a problem, but it's a very sensitive topic because I know there are a lot of single parents and single moms and married parents who say, well, mom has to work outside the home 50 hours a week, or, we both have to work in order to earn money. And so then the kids kind of really get pushed aside. And that's really unhealthy for kids because the matter is we all have 24 hours a day. Some of us don't have 72. And I have moms say to me all the time, and dads, can both parents work outside the home 40, 50 hours a week and raise great kids? I said, well, you can work outside, but your relationship with your kids are going to suffer, and emotionally your kids may suffer. Now, that doesn't mean as a single parent you can't raise a great kid. You certainly can. But you have to realize what's happening is that I'm away from my child, but when I'm with my child, we're going to change the way time goes here because I'm going to have that child. And so I think that parents expect themselves, particularly women, to be able to have a full-time job and be a full-time mother and do both of these really great. But the truth is you can't. But I have a number of women friends, physicians, whose husbands stay home and take care of the kids, and they're amazing dads. Probably better primary caregivers than the women would be. Because the women so it really doesn't matter who, or a lot of couples who, want to, take the kids in 9 to 3, and then the other will come home 3 to, 8 or 9. And that's fine. It's hard on the parents, but great parenting means sacrifice.
Yes.
And what I find is a lot of parents don't want to sacrifice. They don't want to sacrifice income. They don't want to sacrifice their time. They want their lives to go along as normal, as you said, to be able to travel, to be able to have 2 cars, to be able to have a pool in the backyard, to be able to whatever, and have the kids. But it doesn't usually work well that way. And so for me, you're absolutely right. When you put God at the center of the home, then you have parents right outside of God, and then you have the kids. Everything works well because kids, but now what happens a lot of time, kids are the center of the home. Parents sort of jump around their kids. What do you want? What do you want? What do you want? And yet they're really not giving kids what they need. And they're not paying attention to their relationship with God, and they're not nurturing their relationship with each other. So this is a hard, very, very sensitive topic. But my job is to speak out for kids and to say to parents what kids can't say. And that is, Mom or Dad, I really need you. I need to see you more during the day, particularly when I'm young.
It's really interesting that when my daughter told me she was pregnant and I was going to have a granddaughter, she lives 4 hours away from me in Florida. I'm in Birmingham, Alabama. She's in Florida, and I said, okay, I'm going to come visit one weekend every other month, but every week I will FaceTime with my granddaughter. Mm-hmm. We're going to use the technology resources we have. It's great. She can hear my voice. She heard my voice. I had her put the phone on her from the time we knew that she was pregnant. Okay, I spoke to my granddaughter.
Right.
I only had 6 weeks to get to know my daughter in utero because it was a last-minute adoption of a runaway girl, 16 years old. I had 6 weeks notice, but I still spoke to my daughter. She knew my voice when she came out of the womb only after 6 weeks. So I knew that this was going to work. Now I have this relationship with my granddaughter. It's only 6 months old, but she has, and I'm the only one she does this with, she puts her feet on the phone. Right? It started in the beginning that when she found her feet, she wanted to share her feet with me.
She wants to touch.
She wants to touch. So she puts her feet on the phone, and we're bonded. So when I went down there to visit with her, she knew me, we were bonded. We had that bond. I remember holding my daughter and looking right into her eyes to cement that bond. They need that bond. Right? They need that security.
Yes.
And that security is what helps them to be strong.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an insecurity because there is an interdependence. There's not a codependence, but there is an interdependence. And in that inter is an independence. It's an independent dependence upon a strong parent. And that's exactly what exists, so that the struggles that they have, and there's many that you talk about in the book, a lot of it has to do with their identity defined by their relationship with mom and dad. Mm-hmm. If that's their go-to source, if there's an open channel of communication, then these are the teaching moments that we all long for, rather than the damage control that we find ourselves in when our child becomes bulimic or anorexic or suicidal, or we begin to see signs of alcohol use, or we believe that they're sexually active. That's now a different phase. You're saying, I have really an immunization plan that says that you don't have to, that doesn't have to happen in your life. Statistically, it says there's a 50-50 chance it will, but we can impact that if we just change our course.
Yes.
And we go back to being connected, not by technology, but by humanity and by love as this message. And if the message of God is love, then what you're doing is the work of God, and your ministry is at home. And you're not outsourcing it, you are bringing it right to the kitchen table. And that's that touch, that human touch. There is no human touch on social media.
No, and you can't hear a voice, you don't hear inflection, you don't see facial expression, you don't have the touch. And I love your word immunization, because that's exactly what we're doing. We're really protecting these kids as best we can for trouble down the road. Now, there are a lot of great parents that bond to their kids and they're attached, but who do end up getting in trouble. And the vice versa. Some kids have no healthy background and they end up doing very well. But I think the thing that we need to realize too is that, particularly from a father's standpoint, a father is a daughter's first experience with male love. And if she has a positive experience in the first couple years of life, you set the course for how she'll relate to male figures the rest of her life. And that includes God, because God's the father. And if she had a terrible relationship with her dad or didn't trust him, her relationship with God is going to be marred. And I see that a lot. Women with bad relationship with their dad, they don't want anything to do with God. So you're absolutely right. That security they get, and it can come from both parents. It can come from one parent. It's different from mom than it is for dad. But those first few years are so important, because they start taking those little baby roots and they start sinking them into the soil. And then as they grow older, you sink those roots deeper and deeper and deeper, so that when the tree up in the top, the wind hits it, they go back and forth, but don't crack over. And so I think it's just terribly important. And I think that parents may be afraid. They want their kids to be independent. But you don't want an independent 2-year-old, because an independent 2-year-old kind of means that they don't feel attached to anybody. Kids are supposed to be dependent on parents. They're supposed to need hugs. They're supposed to need, consolation. They rely on us to stay alive, really.
Yes.
For food and comfort and to be safe. So you're absolutely right.
We've been talking with Dr. Meg Meeker, author of the new book, Raising a Strong Daughter in a Toxic Culture, 11 Steps to Keep Her Happy, Healthy, and Safe, as a next step in this development from her first best-selling book, Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters, carrying this message forward into being able to anticipate, knowing what we know about the culture today, being able to anticipate the challenges that your daughter, or your son for that matter, will face in this new environment and equipping them.
Being afraid.
Right.
Not being afraid of it, but saying, this is what's there, but I can navigate this and come out on the other side with a really strong daughter.
Amen. Amen. And so we encourage you strongly to visit ignitingnation.com and click on Dr. Meg Meeker's name. It'll take you right to a link to buy the book and to interact with her through this very insightful, from a pediatrician, medical practitioner who has raised 4 kids of her own, practical steps to take in identifying what the culture is now serving up to our children. Dr. Meg Meeker, thank you for sharing this with us here on Revealing the Truth. May God bless all the works of yours and Walter's hands.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I love your program.
God bless you. Thank you so very, very much. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.